Little bit of a introduction there. The headphones, they do nothing. There's a delay. Screw them, we don't need them. We don't need anything around here. Hi, everybody, I'm Bill Whittle. This is Stratosphere Lounge, episode number 61. 61. You know, we'd be able to deal with these tech problems if they were the same tech problems every time, but they're not. They're new ones every single time, but it looks like you guys can hear me okay. It looks like a little level issues there. We'll bring that up just a bit. And it's always an adventure here at the Stratosphere Lounge. Oops, sorry. There we go. But we're here, and we're recording, and we're live from beautiful downtown Sherman Oaks, California. Just got back from a trip. I was away. I was AFK, away from the keyboard. I can't. You know, I just can't. I can't bring myself to say it. I was in the tea place, the capital of the great state of Florida, where I grew up, and so anyway, I had a great time there. There are great people there, and lovely event. But I just don't much like the town. That's all. That's all there is to it. It had something to change the colors. It had something to do with a giant Seminole outside the building. It was at an event that was actually in the stadium. And in order to get to this event, I had to walk past the big statue of whoever that guy is. The dude on the horse. I thought my skin was going to burst into flames, but I'm back. So we have a special edition for us today. We have the Pictures Worth 1,000 Words edition of the Stratosphere Lounge, and it's going to be fun. Somebody in the comment section just asked, Lady Typesetter asked, "Am I not going to CPAC?" I'm not. I thought I was going to CPAC, but they had this thing going at the same time, and I just didn't want to make it another trip. If it had been, if I'd been by myself, I would have gone. If I hadn't had to gone to the Florida gig. So no CPAC for moi this year, but I've got to go. I'm way overdue to go. You know what I'm going to turn those background lights down just a little bit. Hang on one second. No, go away. Nobody go away. Yeah, I made it clear to the driver when I got out of the car. By the way, I was a limo driver in L.A. for, 3 or 4 years when I got out here. And it still takes a little getting used to get out of the back of a town car instead of being in the front of it. A couple people who may not know what's wrong with Tallahassee. For me, I went to the University of Florida, went to the other school. And it's just, this rivalry goes back so far and so deep that it's just, you really have to be a part of it to understand it. When I first got out to Los Angeles, hung out with a lot of Gators, and I still do go to watch Gator football games and stuff. And, we used to say, hey, go to the Gator game. And then people, locals, would say, hey, we've got great football rivalries out here in California. It's like, no, you don't. No, you don't. I don't think there's any other football except Southern football. They a little better. They do some serious football up in Ohio and Pennsylvania, but really in the South, you really have to go to South, Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, all those other states that suck, to be around real football. So, I'll grant you this. You're either in a college town where that's the only thing there is, or you don't have a college football rivalry. I don't believe that any college that's based in a city like Miami or USC really knows what it's like. If you're in a college town, I think I might have said this before, and if you lose a big game, like if the Gators lost to Florida State, just hypothetically, Seminoles are really great this year. It pains me to say it. But let's just say that you were to go to a college... God, you go to a college football game in a college town like Gainesville, and you lose the game, you could just walk into a Best Buy the next day, and just say, how much is that flat screen TV? And I'd be like, yeah, just take it. Get out of here. I don't want to talk about anything. horrible. So anyway, that was my little trip to Tallahassee, and I wish I could have gone to CPAC, but I didn't. But I'm here, so here we go. We've got the very unusual, first time ever out of the gate, Pictures Worth 1,000-Word edition. So we took picture submissions, and we're going to go through them as succinctly but as thoroughly as we can. It seemed like a fun idea, and it looks like it's going to be fun, and I didn't get them in any order. I pulled them in the order that I took them off the site in, but then once I imported them, they listed them by numerical order. So are we all ready to have some fun with pictures? Here we go. The first one is this one. That one is a screenshot from the Cadillac commercial, the recent Cadillac commercial. That's making a lot of waves out there because it's dividing the country precisely down the liberal conservative, or as I like to say, the steely-eyed missile man versus weenie line. It is, if you haven't seen it, you need to go to YouTube and look up the Cadillac commercial. I think it's Poolside, or I forget what it's called. It's terrific. This is I don't remember this actor's name. He was in Band of Brothers, and this commercial is the gutsiest, ballsiest, greatest commercial I've seen in 100 years. I watched this commercial, the best I felt about America in the last 5 years, because this Cadillac commercial is the first time I've seen American pride just unbridled and without apology. For those of you who haven't seen this commercial, I just can't recommend it highly enough. This guy just walks around the outside of his house, nice house, and he's talking about working hard, and he's got a couple lines in there. He's got a line right. I froze it right as he said this one line. This line actually stopped me cold. Actually had me think about something I never thought about before, because he says. He's basically, just a few moments before this, he says, yeah, the Europeans think we're crazy. Whatever. Just that alone I like. Did they think the Wright brothers were crazy? And he lists a bunch of other Americans, and he says, we went to the moon. You know what we got when we got there? Bored. And I just thought, man, I don't know if I've ever really thought of it that way. I don't know if it's ever really kind of dawned on me that way, but it's really, in a weird sort of way, it's actually really kind of cool. He's right. We went to the moon 6 times. Then what happened? And he kept thinking, oh, we did drop the balls. We got bored. We got bored with going to the moon. And it's like, there's something actually deep about that, I think. There's something really kind of shockingly deep, because what we didn't do when we went to the moon is we didn't improve things. We didn't keep going. We didn't go to Mars. We didn't put a base down. Thank you. It's Neil McCullough. He's terrific in Band of Brothers. He's a great actor. And so that was kind of cool. And then a second later after this, he's talking about the lunar rover, and he says, there's a car up there. We left a car up there on the moon, and we left the keys in it. You know why? Because we're the only ones going back. That's why. Oh, man. It was epic. It was epic. And I know that the progressives were just howling. They just didn't know what to do, because you can't have that kind of pride anymore, right? You can't just have that kind of swagger. And I have to tell you one other thing about this. This commercial is written in such a way that it exudes confidence. It's not Neil McCullough. It's Buck. I guess Buck Confidence, who he played. It exudes confidence, and it exudes pride, but it's not in your face. It's not swag. It's not boasting. It's that kind of quiet confidence that you get when you've got the goods. You don't have to shout people down. It's a kind of difference between, I just did it afterwards, kind of difference between the kind of confidence that inbred, natural, quiet sort of knowing that you're good at something that like guys like the Delta Force guys have, versus the kind of mall cop, kind of pump it up and try to impress people kind of thing. It's the difference between walking the walk and talking the talk. And he's not boasting in this ad. He's just saying, hey, this is what we do. This is what we like to do. And this is why, he's not even saying this is why we kick ass. He's just saying, let's get to work. I loved that ad. And apparently the Huffington Post, Jeremy sent me a link to it, did an article on it where they, it's like a national nightmare. This is the national nightmare. This is everything America shouldn't be. And I'm actually gonna go look at that article and read it, and I'll probably do a firewall about that whole thing. It's like can't have any pride in anything, can't think you're good at anything, despite the fact that all the evidence says that you are. That kind of thing's not allowed. And there's a reason it's not allowed, by the way. And you're going to hear me talking about RK for the rest of my life, I think. One of the reasons it's not allowed is because they've done a survey where they found that if people are shown the American flag, like if a parade goes by, their vote swings to Republican for 6 months, 4 or 5 months. There's a latency when they're exposed to patriotic things. There's a latency that makes them more makes them more conservative. So I don't know. But the liberals hate it because it's all about working hard. As another thing too, it's about working hard. It's about the whole idea. You work hard, you get this reward. You get the nice house, you get the nice car, you get the things. Not tolerable in a world of enforced equality. No wonder they hate it so much. And as Sarge 56 says, exceptionalism. Deal with it. If you don't like it, move here. If you don't like living in a country that's not exceptional, move here. We want people that want to work hard, and that's that. So I thought this commercial was just the best commercial I've seen in a long time, and it made me feel better about this country than I've felt in 5 years. It really did. Really, really, truly did. Okay, let's move on to our to the next image that I just took ones that I liked. I mean, I didn't have any particular rants prepared. Obviously, I just saw them just as they came in. So here's the next one I like. I like this one a lot. First of all, it's a great painting. The second thing I like about this is I think Raiders of the Lost Ark is probably the most perfectly constructed movie ever made. I'm not saying it's the best movie ever made, and I'm not saying it's my favorite movie. I'm just saying it's the most perfectly constructed movie I think I've ever seen. It is the most enjoyable movie. It pays off everything it sets up, and it pays it off pretty well. I mean, you have villains that you're chasing, and at the very end, God comes down from heaven and melts their faces off. That's a A-list payoff in my book. So I don't think you get ripped off there in terms of the villain not getting their comeuppance. The pacing and the story and the beat analysis, in terms of how it works, how it's done, is brilliant. As usual, with a good storyteller like Steven Spielberg, you know who this guy is and what he's about by the time you're 10 minutes into it. A lot of movies have that. Certainly my favorite movies have a little mini movie at the beginning. Big Bat Problem has a mini movie. It's a little 4 or 5 minute self-contained movie, and you could play just that, and you've got a beginning, a middle, and the end. And the Idol Rescue in Raiders of the Lost Ark is a neat little movie, and it tells you that this guy is a fortune hunter, and it tells you that he's capable and brave, and it shows you that he's got foibles with the snakes, and he's not above running when it's time to run, and he's a tough guy, but he's a decent guy. And then you see him in a university, and you realize that he's not just a thug, he's not just a brawler. You go immediately from him in the jungle to him in his classroom wearing his bow tie, and all the girls are falling for him, but he's a brilliant, brilliant guy. And so the real reason I like this picture, not just the movie, but this picture, and the reason I adore this character, is because like Han Solo, he's like Han Solo with a college degree. And like Han Solo, he's independent and reliable and rugged, and he's a man, and he does the right thing, and he's got a sense of humor. And so the reason I like this picture is because I think Indiana Jones is probably the kind of archetypical American male, although we've got a couple of those in this episode tonight by happy coincidence. And it's funny, I was talking about this just the other day, it was like yesterday or 2 days ago. My favorite 10 seconds in all of cinema is in Raiders of the Lost Ark. It's my favorite 10 seconds ever. And I know many of you know this story. I'll tell it anyway for those few of you who don't. I saw Raiders of the Lost Ark in a theater in Gainesville, Florida. I was in a movie theater, packed house. And I had no idea what I was getting, and I was hoping for sci-fi. I was a little disappointed when I first saw it was a period piece. But once they started flying and the little lines started moving on the map, the little, the path of the flying boat and stuff, I said, I'm in. But there's a scene in this movie where Indiana Jones is in Marrakesh or something like that. He's in some Arabian country, and he's chasing some guys down, and he's already been beaten up, and he's sick. He's probably got dysentery, and he's probably tired. He looks beat up and tired and worn out. That's another thing I like about the character. He takes his punishment. He's not kind of this immortal sort of, Roger Moore, James Bond, or, he gets hurt, and you can tell, and he's sore when he moves. It's really awesome. So he's going through the marketplace, and the crowds part, and up ahead of him is the Arabic Indiana Jones. He's the Arabic warrior, and he's got his scimitar, and he's a giant of a man, and he's got this terrifying makeup on. He's in a black outfit, and he's got his scimitar, and he's swirling it around. And in the space of 10 seconds of this guy doing his moves with his swords, you realize that this guy is the warrior of his culture. He's simply the best that they've got. He's a guy who's been training with a sword his entire life, and has dedicated his entire life to warfare. And then Indiana Jones looks at him, and there's going to be this gigantic confrontation, and all of a sudden, with a look that's perfect. It's Cairo, thank you. I thought it was Marrakesh, Cairo. With a look that's the look is what captures the look is what it works for. He just reaches down, pulls out his gun, and just shoots him dead, and immediately goes on. And the thing about the look is, the look isn't an angry look. The look isn't a smug look. The look isn't a superior look. The look isn't I've got a draw on you look. The look is not a I'm better than you are look. The look is not take this, you rotten son of a bitch look. He's annoyed. He's annoyed. It's the kind of look you would get if a light went red on you while you were in a hurry. It's like, oh, for God's sake, and off he goes. And I saw it in a theater, a college theater, college town. I saw it in a college town, and people leapt out of their seats. They leapt out of their seats. They just, honest to God, got up out of their chairs and cheered. And I did too. And I think the reason that everybody cheered was because you didn't have time to think about this, right? There's nobody sat down and saw this and said, was this? No, it just bang, and people just instantly got out of their chairs. And I think it's because it was a visceral, immediate, crystal clear understanding of the power of the West. I just think it's just that. I think it's just that simple. Just about the power of the West. And before I go on, I'm going to go change the color of those lights behind me, because I'm looking at the feedback here, and the white light neon is giving me this jaundiced look. So if I switch to red, I'll look a little better. I'm sorry about this. I know it's a little odd, but it's part of the charm of the show. Might be a little better. I've said this 100 times before. The problem with this camera, I'm shooting this magnificent Stratosphere Lounge on the camera that's right built into my Mac. And the problem with the camera is you can't preset it. It's constantly doing a light adjustment, constantly doing a color adjustment. If I could just preset it, I'd be a happy camper. But it's the look. It's the look that Indy gave. That kind of, really? Do we really have time for this? I don't really want to kill. Oh, God. All right. That's why it works. And the main thing that's so beautiful about this is, and this will take me off on a little bit, but let's go back to the picture so we remember what we're talking about. The beautiful thing about this story, I'm quite sure it's true. Somebody suggested it might be legendary, the story behind this, but I'm pretty sure it's true. It goes to show you what a collaborative art movie making is, and why directors who are autocrats and tyrants are not only just bad people, but they're bad directors, because so often an actor will come up with something that the director never thought of. The person you're looking at right here, Harrison Ford, was the guy who came up with the line when Princess Leia says, "I love you," when he's being dipped into carbonite. He's supposed to say, "I love you too." And he just turned to Spielberg and Star Wars and Empire Strikes Back and said, "It just doesn't seem right. How about if I just say, I know?" And he said, "I know," and it took that moment into perfection. instead of melodrama. And Spielberg, to his credit, had the sense to understand that. But they're shooting the scene, according to the story. They're shooting the scene in Cairo, and Harrison Ford, the actor, I think actually had dysentery. Or was very, very ill. Malaria, something. He was sick as a dog. Sick as a dog. Hey, they tell me I can turn off my automatic settings. I'll try that next time. And he was just so ill that he couldn't do what was scheduled to be done. And what was scheduled to be done, according to the script, was there was going to be a gigantic fight between Indiana Jones and this Arab swordsman. According to the script, Indiana Jones was going to get the whip out, and they were going to just do this big choreographed thing. And the reason they didn't do it was because Harrison Ford was feeling so sick. He just said, "Steven, I just feel awful. I got the gun here. Can't I just shoot the guy?" And again, the genius of a guy like Spielberg is to see the brilliance of an improvement in the story. And that's exactly said. Well, duh, of course. It became the best moment in the movie, and it became the best moment that I've ever seen in the movies. I've never, ever, ever have I had a moment I enjoyed as much as that moment. Ever. And I mean that from the bottom of my heart. It was simply the best thing I ever saw. And it was by accident. Funny thing, too, about Spielberg and accidents and how, and this just doesn't apply to movies, although it certainly is a big deal. By the way, thank you. I'm so sorry about that, Dave Olson. You guys must be thinking I'm an idiot. Steven Spielberg didn't direct Revenge of the Empire Strikes Back. Kirshner did. Sorry about that. That was a complete. I don't know how I screwed that up. But there's another story that I like even better about the power of accidents. And this was not just one accident. This was a catastrophe, just a catastrophe. But Steve Spielberg did Sugarland Express, which was a little movie. He had some talent. He did a couple of night galleries. A young director, young kid, did one movie. And they gave him Jaws. And Jaws was a big novel, but it wasn't a blockbuster movie because there were no blockbuster movies. Gone with the Wind was, giant studio thing. In my humble opinion, as a guy who's studied film for a while, I think Jaws is the first modern movie. I think Jaws is the first really genuinely modern movie. You look at Jaws today, it looks like a movie. You could screen Jaws today, and it would look like a modern movie. Gone with the Wind is not a modern movie, and even Patton is not a modern movie, but Jaws is. So what you end up with is you end up with Steven Spielberg, young guy, gets this movie, important movie, career buster or builder. And the entire script and the entire movie, the whole thing, the title character is Jaws. It's about a shark. And so they spend all this money on this mechanical great white shark. And this great white shark is the star of the movie. So they get out there on location, and here's this young guy in his 20s, I think. And they're getting ready to shoot the first scenes, and the shark doesn't work. It's not like the shark malfunctions. It just doesn't work. It doesn't move. It just doesn't move. And so now you've got a guy, and I've had to think on my feet like this before on a movie set as a director, but boy, you want to talk about pressure and stakes. Now you got a guy who's out on location, which is hard enough as it is, on location in water, which is infinitely harder. You got big-name actors all around you. You got Dreyfuss and Roy Scheider and Robert Shaw. And you've got a shark that doesn't work. In other words, you're dead. You're dead. You're dead in the water, if you'll pardon the expression. You're doomed. You've got nothing. Nothing. And so what Spielberg had to do on the fly is he had to improvise, and he had to imagine what he could show to show that the shark was there without showing the shark. And so he would show wakes, or maybe you'd see the fin, or even the fin really mostly wasn't working. But the real breakthrough thing was the barrels, right? He showed those barrels. They put a harpoon into the shark, and the shark dives and takes the barrel down, and it comes back up, put another barrel into the shark. And I'm doing this from memory. I haven't seen it in a long time. But basically says he's going to dive again, and Quint says, no, he can't take two. There's no shark will ever take two, or three, or something like that, whatever the number was. So they put this third barrel into him, and Quint says, no, there's not a shark alive that'll take 3 barrels, and down the thing goes. And what you've done is something fantastic. you've basically, by having those barrels disappear under the water, you've heard from the shark expert that this is not a shark. And because you never saw the shark, even though you were supposed to have seen the shark in the beginning, presumably that opening sequence where the girl's torn to death, there's like I said before, a little movie within a movie, right? The opening sequence of Jaws. You've got this beautiful, beautiful girl out there skinny dipping by the buoy out there, and she's cut to pieces. And it's a movie within a movie. If it had just ended there, it would have been a little movie. Where's Susie or whatever her name was? And the guy passes out drunk and stuff. So presumably he would have done a lot of showing the shark attacking that girl at nighttime, but the shark wasn't working. So you never see the shark. And you never saw the shark. You just saw the wake, and you saw those barrels going under. And when the barrels went under, and Quint says a shark won't take, there's not a shark alive that can take 3 barrels under, and he takes the 3 barrels, you realize this is not a shark. And then you get to the essence of what Peter Benchley was trying to say, and that having the shark working mechanically would have utterly ruined. And that is that Jaws is not about men versus a shark. Jaws is about men versus nature. It's about them fighting evil. If it's just an animal, it's an animal. But it's not an animal. Jaws is evil. Jaws is Satan. Jaws is the devil. Jaws is the embodiment of the darkness that lies out under the surface of the water that you cannot see. And if you had seen it, the movie would have been ruined. It would have been an awful movie. You may never have heard of Steven Spielberg, because the 2 or 3 times where the shark actually works, when the shark comes up and bites Quint and pulls him into the water, the shark looks ridiculous. It looks silly. But what Spielberg understood was the same thing that Hitchcock understood in the shower scene, and that is that what you don't see is far more powerful than what you do see. Most people won't believe this is true, but if you look at the shower scene in Psycho, you never ever see that knife touching flesh. You have a fine, extremely potent memory of watching Janet Leigh getting stabbed to death, but the knife never touched her, not once. All you saw were hands grasping the shower curtains and hands going up in defense and blood running down the drain, which turned out was India ink, by the way, because it was shot in black and white. And you never saw the knife touch her skin, let alone enter her skin. If they shot that movie today, or any kind of horror movie, needless to say, you see a guy with a chainsaw cut a guy in half and all his guts would come out, and then you'd see his spinal cord and his beating heart and all this other stuff. But nope, Hitchcock understood that you don't show it. And by not showing it, you allow your imagination to do the work. And Dave Wellman says, what about Alien and Aliens? Aliens, you never really get a great look at the aliens in Aliens, but in the first movie, in Alien, you never saw the creature. You never really saw the creature, really saw it, until the end, when it's in the shuttle with Ripley. It's always in the shadows, it's always moving, and that darkness in the shadows is just so much more terrifying than a guy in an alien suit or a mechanical shark that's either working or not working. All of that off of the Indiana Jones thing, because, again, we got on that because of that moment where Spielberg improvised and Harrison Ford improvised and used the gunshot against that Arab swordsman. It's the greatest moment ever. I just loved it. I thought it was absolutely, absolutely fantastic. So that's that picture. Talk about movies all day. We need to do a movie show, too, in addition to other stuff. Let's say, I don't know what this is. I can't even read the thumbnail. What is that one? Oh! We're back to RK again. I saw this one because I liked it. And there's a point about RK I want to make. I'm going to be, like I said, I got RK forever and got RK on the brain. For those of you who haven't been following, I read a book called The Evolutionary Basis for Political Philosophy, and talked about R being a liberal philosophy where you're dealing with your success rate is based on rate of reproduction. Or I guess in modern society, since we have birth control, it should be a rate of sexual promiscuity, really. And then K would be a much more competitive species, and rabbits and mice and so on are R. They don't like competition. They don't invest a lot in their young. They have lots of young. Their success strategy is based on sexual promiscuity. and they don't have any codes of behavior because they don't need them. If you're a rabbit on an endless field of grass and another rabbit comes along and the rabbit wants to fight you, it doesn't make sense to fight the rabbit. You just move over a foot and there's more grass than you could possibly eat. So K, on the other hand, because K species predators are almost exclusively K, I guess, because in a limited environment like wolves in the snow, K species has to be much more selective. It has to compete for mating rights. They invest a lot more in their kids. They have codes of behavior that prevent them from killing each other with their mating rituals and other competitive rituals within the group. And somebody was kind enough to select, I guess, Photoshop these two pictures and talk about R and K in terms of child rearing. And I wanted to bring this up for one reason. Because when you start getting into this RK argument and you start talking about how K is the conservative philosophy, R is the liberal philosophy, K enjoys competition through things like capitalism, free market, where, if a guy's got a dry cleaning store and he does a terrible job and I go ahead and pull it out and decide I'm going to, pull out the cash in the wallet, I'm going to open a new dry cleaning store. I'm not going to spend 45 minutes on it, guys. I'm telling you, just going through this very quickly. Then you're taking the resources, and it seems mean. And the one point I wanted to make about this picture is that actually the competitors, the predators, the Ks, take much better care of their young and much better care of their weak and their old than the Rs do. I just thought that had to be said. It's actually the lions that take better care of their children than the gazelles, and it's the wolves that take better care of the pups than the rabbits do. All of the civilizational type behaviors and all of the protection for the weak and the old and the sick come from the Ks. It doesn't come from the Rs. The Rs talk about it. The Ks actually do it. That's why conservatives are so much more charity-driven than liberals are. They actually feel that their empathy levels are not as personal. They don't connect to them, feel that pain the way that liberals do. They don't internalize the pain, but they see the need and they want to do something about it. They want to fix it. So that picture came up, and I wanted to bring that up about the K thing because there's a lot of criticisms of conservatives and competition as being ruthless and not caring about the consequences. No, not true. They do care about the consequences. They care about the consequences a lot. And we learn not through winning competitions. We learn through losing competitions. Everything we learn through failure. So everybody's, oh, no, not again. Gosh, we're not going to be talking about RK that much, I guess, because I'm going to be running with this in things like the Common Sense Resistance movie. Here we go. Moving on to the next one. I just like this one. You know you're a history fan when you still get upset thinking about the Library of Alexandria. Wow. For those of you who may not know, Alexandria was really the capital of the ancient world. It was founded by Alexander the Great. It's in Egypt, not too far from the mouth of the River Nile. It probably was right on the delta, I guess, at the time. And Alexandria was the center of learning for the world. It was the university town for the entire planet, for all of the culture, all of the civilization, and all of the great, great works were gathered together and placed in Alexandria in a library. And the library burned down. And nobody knows how much we actually lost. Some people have estimated it might have been as high as 95, 98% of all of the ancient learnings of the Greeks and all of the information that existed prior to the burning of that library. Well, you want to talk about Obamacare or Common Core as a single point of failure. You know, if you don't have this stuff backed up and you've only got one copy of a scroll and all the scrolls go to one place and then that place burns down, you got a trouble. You got a real problem. But, yeah, when the library in Alexandria burned, some estimates were that we lost 95, 98% of all ancient wisdom. And if you think about that, that's enough to make you just, weeping's not the word. I mean, how many plays were lost? I mean, we know, we probably can assume that there were no major philosophical players, between Aristotle and Plato and Socrates that weren't at least mentioned by name, but we don't know that for sure. How many works of... What if you were to just take away 95% of all our knowledge? What if you took 95% of all the books that are out there, all the novels that are read? Most of them are Dreck, but you take away 95% of the good ones too. I mean, you might lose all of Mark Twain. You might lose all of Ernest Hemingway. There may be a play of Shakespeare left or two. So, catastrophe. And just a catastrophe. It makes you wonder what knowledge could have resided there and whether it would have prevented the Dark Ages or shortened them. So it's, it's awful. And you also have to, that's one nice thing about the internet, needless to say, is the idea of not only is the knowledge digitized and it's digitized and it is stored in so many different locations. It's such a serial thing where there's so many people have access to it that it's very hard to kill all that knowledge now. Once it's out there, it's out there. In fact, obviously, if you have a picture that's not flattering to yourself or a politician, you can't get that back. Once it's on the internet, it could be thousands of places, millions of places. With that said, I might have talked about this once very briefly. I think you could make a ton of money by producing a set of books that would be essentially immortal. I think we've probably got the means to do that. I don't know what they'd be printed on. I'm not enough of an engineer or a chemist to really understand this, but words, pages that were etched, very, very lightly etched on some kind of metal foil or something that were literally would last a million years. That'd be kind of a cool thing to have, don't you think? If you had money to burn, if you had plenty of resources to spend on things that tickled your fancy, I wouldn't mind having a library of some of the most essential books that are on hard copy format that could never be destroyed. I think that'd be really cool. Fireproof, UV proof. You just mold and mildew, whatever. You just bury them out in the mud for a while, and people dig them up 3 million years later and just hose them off with water, and there they are. That'd be kind of cool. It'd be a neat thing to have. It'd be a neat conversation piece, and probably be a public service, I think. But yeah. So that's the library at Alexandria. This one I chose for a very specific reason. It's a great Photoshop, obviously, and it's taken from the 1984 movie, which was probably made, I forget when it was made, but it was the one with John Hurt, who's a really terrific Winston Smith. And it's a great piece of Photoshop, and it's chilling and all that other stuff. But the main reason I'm pointing that out to you is I want you to look at the logo, because there's two things going on there. The V for victory. Three things there. The V for victory. This is an iconography lesson. The handshake and INGSOC. The V for victory is there because this is INGSOC. And what is INGSOC? INGSOC is English Socialism. If you read 1984, the name of the government is INGSOC, English Socialism. Most kids reading 1984 today are convinced it's a right-wing takeover. They think it's the conservatives that took over. No. 1984 is what happens when socialism comes to Britain. INGSOC is English Socialism. And it's interesting, isn't it, that you've got the white hand and the black hand shaking hands, that they're using this idea of racial solidarity and international solidarity and all of these other things to sell you on this mass murdering tyranny. The V for victory is there because V for victory is very British. At the height of Britain's power, the V for victory was something Churchill held up all the time, and I was just told by FDS man that it was actually made in 1984. The movie was made in 1984. The book was written in 1948. That's how he got the title, 1984, just inverted the last two letters. It's when Orwell wrote it in 1948. And I bring this up only so that you don't let anybody else get away with it. You do not let anybody tell you that 1984 was about fascism or the right wing, or it is fascism, obviously, but the right wing or conservatism. It's It's the left. It's what happens when socialists take over. And if you don't believe me, have them look at this picture or have them read the word INGSOC, which means English socialism. It's English socialism. This is what happens when you get totalitarian power in the hands of the state. And they put the black hand shaking the white hand as all part of the wonderful, 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 wonderful moral advantages of this horror and nightmare that's cost so many millions of lives. And that's how they sell it to you. Now, this particular thing looks very Soviet and very Nazi with the black and the red and the strong colors and the strong fascistic towering monolith. That's what Soviet architecture was designed to inspire in people. And Nazi architecture, too. Massive quality to the architecture was designed to make the individual seem insignificant and non-existent. The opposite of communism is not Nazism. The opposite of communism and Nazism is individuality and individualism and limited government. I think Jonah Goldberg's exactly right. Communism, which is, the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, it's not the Union of Communist Republics. They called themselves socialists. The communists and the National Socialist German Workers' Parties, the Nazis, were both socialists, and both believed in a big state, both believed in a single leader, both believed in cradle-to-grave benefits, both believed in gun control, both believed in all of these things. They were just virtually identical. If you had to put a difference between the Nazis and the communists, is the Nazis were racial socialists and the communists were international socialists. Other than that, they're the same exact thing. And the opposite of Nazis is not communists, and the opposite of communists is not Nazis. They're the same thing. They're like Coke and Pepsi. The opposite of the Nazis and the communists is Americans, is individuality, individualists, private property, gun rights, individual protections. The whole reason that the Nazi architecture and the Soviet architecture was so horrid and monolithic was designed to make the individual realize he's nothing, that the state was everything. And what they were trying to do psychologically, because you have to understand how these states perpetuated themselves, what they were trying to do psychologically with their architecture and everything else was to take people's natural religious feelings, which every human being has, and transpose them onto the state so that even though they would die, the state would live on. And they would say this verbatim: even though the individual dies, the state lives on. You live on in the state. Your little contribution to the state, that little brick that you lay in this monolithic giant state building, that's your immortality. It's not individual life after death with your friends, but you do contribute to the state, and the state lives forever. So that's your immortality, and that's how it works. So pick that last picture just so we know that next time you see 1984 being referenced by anybody, remind them INGSOC. It's socialism. It's dear leader, or big brother, or the Fuhrer. It's one person in charge, and one administration, and one political party. It's everything that the left wants. It is what leftism is. Leftism is the means to control other people through coercion because they can't compete on their own. Simple. There you go. Moving on. I just put this in here very briefly, and I just did it because I love it. I think Grumpy Cat is my favorite thing in the face of the earth. I just think Grumpy Cat I love her so much. I've always wondered about this picture. There's a caption on this picture once that I saw that was basically obviously without Grumpy Cat in it, and I think the caption said, "Embassy under attack? ? Any Muslims hurt?" Yeah. I don't know what Barack and Michelle are doing that face for, but I just love. I think it's called a sturgeon face because of the bottom of a sturgeon fish looks like that. But I just wanted to talk about Grumpy Cat just for one moment because I think all the Grumpy Cat memes are fantastic. I have all of them. I just love that expression on that animal. But here's what's interesting too. Grumpy Cat is a little freak of nature, bless her little heart. But she is in fact a freak of nature. And the expression on that cat of displeasure and the darkness under the eyes and the downturned mouth, she always looks grumpy. She's grumpy all the time. But the point I'm trying to make here is that cat could be as happy as could be. That's just the way it's built. The inverse of grumpy cat, by the way, for those of you who've seen grumpy cat up close with that downturned mouth and the dark rings around the eyes, the inverse of that is the dolphin. Dolphin has a built-in smile. It's the way its mouth is constructed in order to catch fish, but when its mouth is closed or when it's open, it's smiling. And we read that smile, and we identify with that smile. It's one of the reasons we think dolphins are such nice animals and sharks are such bad animals. And look, I'm not stupid enough to not say that the sharks eat us and the dolphins don't, and dolphins often help us. But the fact is, that built-in kind of smile is a lot nicer than a built-in. I can't do the sturgeon face. I can't. I don't know how they do it. I just don't have the facial muscles for it. But I just love Grumpy Cat, and I love all the Grumpy Cat memes, and don't be fooled by what I was just saying. That cat with the dark eyes and the very sour expression in the downturned mouth could be purring and as happy as can be. And likewise, a dolphin could be trying to kill you or trying to kill something. It's got a big smile on its face. So don't be deluded by certain creatures that are smiling all the time. Because if you elect a guy based on his smile, that doesn't mean he's happy, and it doesn't mean he's a nice guy. It just means he's got a face that can do one of these and convince you. And there's more to it than that, I think. Here's the next one. This one was a pleasant surprise, I have to tell you. In our Pictures Worth 1,000 Words episode of the Stratosphere Lounge, I was really very pleasantly surprised to see this one. As somebody I don't get to see enough of. I miss this guy. Robert Conrad. We're going to be, I guess just by happenstance, we've got a bunch of real solid American males here. And Robert Conrad is one of them. I mean, we've seen 3 of them already, right? I mean, this guy is a pretty alpha male, and this guy's a pretty alpha male, and so is Robert Conrad. Robert Conrad did Baba Black Sheep, which became Black Sheep Squadron. He was okay in that, I guess. It was an okay show, I guess. But Robert Conrad was on one of my all-time favorite shows, maybe my second favorite show of all time, which was The Wild Wild West. I never talk about The Wild Wild West. I loved it. I loved it. It was just such an incredibly cool show. The idea that you would have kind of, obviously what the Wild Wild West is. The Wild Wild West is James Bond in the Old West. He works for the Secret Service. He's an intelligence agent, and he's James Bond in the Old West. And he was terrific. I hear he's tiny. Somebody here who's not doing a show in live time can probably tell me how tall Robert Conrad was, but I've heard he was a really small guy. He looks pretty small and compact. But James West was an awesome, amazing character. He was a great guy. Another all-American guy. I just so miss that clean-cut look, that 60s look is just terrific. And Robert Conrad was great. And the great thing about the Wild Wild West was it was kind of not just James Bond in the Old West, it was science fiction in the Old West. The devices and the gadgets were terrific. And now there's a whole genre that some of you undoubtedly know about, but many of you may not. It's called steampunk. And steampunk is where you reimagine technology as if the Victorians had built it in the 1800s. So you get, you get time machines, like in the movie The Time Machine, with Robert Taylor, who looks a bit like Robert Conrad, I think. Another all-American guy. But in The Time Machine, the version they did, I guess in the late 50s, he's a Victorian inventor, so the time machine looks like it was invented by a Victorian. Lots of crystal and brass and red leather, little studded leather chair and stuff. And all of the technology in the Wild Wild West was really very Victorian, very steampunk, it'd be what you call it today. And, of course, James West was the action guy who always got the girl, and he got the really super cool blue kind of Western, he had a Eisenhower jacket. Man, he looked great in that thing. It's just a cool-looking tough-looking little dude. And great credit goes to his partner, Artemis Gordon, played by Ross Martin, who I thought was very, very underrated. I saw Ross Martin. I've been watching the Twilight Zone episodes on Hulu Plus back-to-back. one at a time. I've got through the whole first season. I'm on the second season now. And already I've seen Ross Martin in a couple of things. And Ross Martin had a lot of depth, had a lot of soul to him. And Ross Martin as Artemis Gordon was great. And they were a great team. They had great chemistry. And Ross Martin had all kinds of great gadgets and devices and disguises and stuff. And they had a terrific villain, too, Miguelito Loveless. What was that actor's name? Michael, I want to say Landsberg, but I don't think that's quite it. He was a midget, and he was in everything. He was in, he had a great role in the Star Trek episode, played his stepchildren. And he was an evil genius, Miguelito Loveless, and he invented all these awesome, cool, steampunk devices. And so when I got a chance to see Robert Conrad and took me back to the Wild Wild West, that show was great. And the thing, obviously, the best thing about that show was the opening credits, where you'd see the little movie of the gunfight thing and 4 little stages. And I remember the first time I saw the Wild Wild West, and they did the freeze frame at the end of Act 1, and they put it in one of the corners. And see, the plot was the same thing. There's a fight, he gets knocked out, he plays his cards, which is a reveal, something happens, then he's betrayed by the woman, and they put the little freeze frame in the corners, like here. And you come back to the end of the second act, and you see freeze frame there, and it'd be like, oh, I remember what happened at the end of the first act. That idea of putting those 4 little vignettes in there was fantastic. Fantastic. 5'6", I'm told. That's pretty short for a guy, but, I don't know how tall Tom Cruise is. I've heard he's pretty tiny, too. But he didn't look 5'6". He looked tough. And speaking of tough, he did those great Ever Ready commercials where he put a battery on his shoulder and just dared somebody to knock it off. So, yeah, Wild Wild West, that was fun to see. Thanks, that was really awesome. Somebody sent this one in our Pictures Worth 1,000 Words Stratosphere Lounge, episode 61, I think. And they sent that in because they heard me talking about dressing up as Batman, and I actually could have been me. It's so close to being me that I really love it. It's got that old Instachrome look, or Kodachrome look, I guess. The reason I brought this one in, I wanted to talk about Michael Dunn, thank you, was the name of the actor in Wild Wild West. It was David Wellman came up with that. The thing I like about this picture is the open imagination, and that's still encouraged today. But what's not encouraged today is this little boy's encouraged to be a hero, and I guess I'll let you sort of be a hero in a Batman suit, so long as you don't take out a batarang or make your fingers into something that looks like a gun, in which case you'll be suspended and they'll call the police on you. I'd heard about the kid, the 10-year-old boy who was suspended or maybe even expelled because he made a gun with his fingers, went bang, bang like that. And apparently the teacher panicked, and he was booked with having a Class 2 weapon look-alike, his finger, holding the little 10-year-old holding his finger up, going bang, bang, bang. That is a look-alike weapon that apparently so terrified the teacher that the kid had to be suspended. And we breed that out of our gene pool at our peril. This idea that that we're going to be that hysterical over this many things. It's honestly, if little boys can't be little boys and grab a stick and use a stick as a rifle, because they will, they'll pick up a stick and use it as a rifle. They'll hold up little sticks as guns. They'll make little guns out of their things. We used to have, needless to say, for those of you out there, used to have cap guns and 6-shooters and pop, pop, pop. And if you took a roll of paper caps were amazing. I don't know, some of you out there didn't know what paper caps were. A little too young for that. It was a little roll of red paper about that wide, and had little holes in it, sprocket holes in it, and it would be wound up into a little roll about that big, and you'd feed it into your cap gun, and then a little, when you pull the trigger on your revolver, it'd pull the hammer back, and then the hammer would hit a little cap, and embedded in this little piece of paper ribbon was a little tiny little dimple of actual gunpowder. And so when you hit it, it would go bang, and smoke would come out too, and the smoke was the best part, actually. And then as you pulled the trigger and it went bang, a little hook would come down and pull that piece of paper down and put the next cap in its place. And you just go bang, 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 bang. And sure enough, it would sound like a gun and smell like a gun. And as you get older, you figure out if you took all the whole roll of paper caps, I don't know, 15, 20, 30 tiny little dimples of gunpowder. And if you lay it out on the sidewalk and hit it with a hammer, it makes a much louder noise, which is pretty cool. Little boys want to be heroes and dress up in hero outfits, and they want to play cops and robbers. And when you scare a child that much by calling the police and having them suspended because they go bang, 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 because the principal or the teacher is such a hysterical lunatic. They're such a lunatic. They're so hysterical, terrified, petrified weaklings that they have to do this. Then it's just a matter of time until there are no heroes left, which is what the left wants and what feminists want. They want to eliminate male strength because male strength threatens them. I saw a lot of people saying, hope we don't get into this RK thing again, so we won't. But I know what makes it happen now. Now I understand why the weak want everybody to be weak, and why the hysterical want everybody to be hysterical. Makes sense to me now. I have an understanding of why, and I understand why it's a strategy for them successfully to function. But it's the end of the world if we let it happen. We know what happens when you take the strength out of society. You take the heroism out of a society. When you don't let little boys be good guys in white hats, then there's nobody to protect you from the little boys who are going to be the bad guys with the black hats. Those people will always be here. They've always been here, and they always will be here. And if we don't have people who are ready to defend them, who are good, then there will be no defense against the bad people. So if you eliminate goodness, and if you eliminate strength, and if you eliminate masculinity, and even if you eliminate guns, you will still have bad, violent men who will come and take and steal and rape and murder. And you either stop them or you don't. And it's just that simple. And you would think that the left, who are so unwilling to defend themselves, would be more in favor of having other people ready to defend them. But again, I don't think that's why. I think they're okay with predation as long as it takes everybody. They can't handle the idea that certain people would defend themselves and other people not defend themselves. That really shows them something really important about themselves that they don't like. So I'm very worried about this treatment of boys. I'm really worried that as long as he's dressed up in a costume, that's fine, because if he's dressed up in a costume, he can be like a little bit of girl. But if he's dressed up in a costume and starts doing heroic things and starts apprehending criminals or shows a desire to use whatever forces or weapons he can to protect innocent people, including little girls, then this boy is going to be pulled out of school and he's going to have it beaten out of him. And that's the plan. That's what the rabbit people want. The rabbit people want us all to be rabbits. And any of us that show any signs of being wolves or being able to fight, well, not wolves, really sheepdogs, then it's got to go. And our only response to this has got to be, we just got to get our kids out of schools. We just have to get them away from these people. And if it turns out that means homeschooling them, great. If it means you have to teach them on a street corner or in a back alley or under a tree with a slate and a piece of chalk, then do that. But get them the hell away from these god-awful hystericals, just these emotional, hysterical people who wig out when a kid bites a Pop-Tart into the shape of a gun or goes like bang bang to somebody. Apparently Jeremy was telling me just before we rolled today that the principal was saying he has no excuse that he wasn't warned. I've been warning them for forever and ever and ever that this kind of thing will be not tolerant. Zero tolerance. It's like, zero tolerance of everything else too. Zero tolerance of playing tag, zero tolerance of forming friends. There are already schools somewhere, I don't know if it was here or I guess it's the UK, where they're just slightly ahead of us over there, by the way. But over there in the UK, they were saying they were going to try and discourage kids from having best friends, because if you have a best friend, it discriminates against other kids and hurts their feelings and hurts their self-esteem. If you and Jimmy and David, Billy and Jimmy and Davy are all friends, and Billy and Davy are best friends, and somehow that hurts Jimmy's feelings and his self-esteem, so you can't have best friends. They're actually seriously promoting this, and they'll probably get it too. They'll make it illegal to have a best friend because it's harmful and hateful. Just mark my words, it's gonna happen. So if I have I had little boys, I'd get them cap guns, and if I had to import them from China or someplace else that's free, that's what I'd do. I'd hide them in a Prius and have that shipped in. I'd have a Prius shipped in with 60,000 cap guns inside, something that they'd never open, and then I'd just go out and they can go out and play caps all day. Because my feeling has been that I've never seen a kid who ever played caps go out and shoot other people. When you find the people who actually do shoot other people, first of all, they're exceedingly rare. 1 or 2 of them go off every year in a country of 300 million people. A failure rate of 1 in 300 million is not a spectacular failure rate by anybody's standards. The second thing is I just have them go out and shoot caps, because shooting caps with your friends, playing cowboys and Indians, yes, or good guys and bad guys is socializing. That's something you do to make friends. It's not something you do to kill friends. It's something you do to make friends. And so if you have real friends and you socialize with guys, then you learn that other people are people. And once you realize that other people are people, then you don't go kill them anymore. It's really pretty simple. I hadn't really given this a whole lot of thought before this exact instant, but when you go out and play cowboys and Indians with your friends, the fights come down to whether they got you. I got you. No, you didn't. You missed. Oh, I didn't. I got you. What are you really saying here? You're really saying that you're forming personal relationships, personal friendships with other boys that are your friends. You wouldn't hurt them in a heartbeat. The kids that do the actual shooting, guys like, I'm not going to mention their names, but the 2 guys at Columbine and everybody else, those kids who shoot real people are loners. They're people who don't go out and play. They don't go play with their friends. They sit in the basement and watch movies about things like this. They don't have close friends. If they had close friends, they have close friends that talk them off the ledge. I don't know how many god-awful things I would have done if I hadn't had great friends. I've had friends just keep me out of trouble. And degree I had parents, and I had a guy who was my older brother. I talked about that once, who basically I was, what the hell did I do? It was something really just fundamentally stupid. What was it thing? Did I throw a wrapper out the window maybe? I've forgotten. He said, why'd you do that for? I don't know. You know it's wrong, right? Yeah. Well, if you knew it was wrong, why did you do it? I'm like 14 by this point. I don't know. Sorry. Next thing you know, you don't do it again. You don't want to make this person ashamed of you. You know that you've got somebody you look up to, somebody you respect. You want them to be proud of you. So this kind of thing is what prevents kids from shooting up schools, not keeping them away from cap guns. Keeping them away from cap guns makes them feel like their natural inclinations to go out and play and have fun and shoot things and be boys is wrong and dirty and evil, and that means it's going to go underground. It means they're going to repress it, and the more they repress it, the more you end up with real shootings. It's just idiotic. Anybody can tell you this, but nobody wants to listen because these people are ideologues and they're hysterics. I'm really going to make a point out of this. They're hysterics. They're not just sensitive or moral. They're hysterics. They're neurotic. They've got mental illness. If you get so lathered up about a little kid going bang bang, or a little boy in fifth grade, a 5-year-old boy kisses a 5-year-old girl on the cheek, and you go into a fit and you call the police, you're hysterical. You're a hysterical neurotic. You've got a serious emotional problem. You need to go to a psychiatric hospital for evaluation, not the kid. You need to go. There's something wrong with you. And zero tolerance policies are for people who can't make decisions, or for people who don't want to risk making decisions because they don't want the consequences of those decisions. It's all Rabbitville, man. I'm telling you, all of it. I see clearly now. Which brings us to this next picture, which is this one. Thank you very much for putting that baseball card together. I love that picture. I know many of you have seen it before. I love it because I love the look, and most people say, aside from saying, I have to go back to camera here for a second, they look at the picture and say, get that rear elbow up, Bill. So thank you. If you'd been there at the time when I needed it, I would have gotten that rear elbow up. But you weren't. Not that I don't appreciate the comment later rather than never. But yes, let's just say I had the rear elbow up. Hit a triple on that at bat. I remember the photographer being there. I never did hit a home run in Little League, but I hit a triple, and that was pretty cool. But there's a couple things I want to say about this picture. Number one, I was slim. And the reason I was slim was because I was outside, and I was outside running around in little diamond-shaped patterns. Although generally just to first base and then making a quick right. But nevertheless, I was outside running, and I was running in right field, and then I was running at first base. And we used to run before practice, and we used to run after practice. And I used to ride my bicycle to get to practice. And we didn't have an obesity epidemic, not because there weren't McDonald's, but because we used to go outside and do things. So there's that. I like the look of concentration, but there's nothing unique to me about that look of concentration. Every little kid who's ever stood up and had a ball thrown at him that they tried to hit with a stick looks pretty much like that. But it was nice to capture the moment. The thing I want to talk about this picture about just real quick is that particular time of my life, because I grew up in Bermuda. And I went to British schools in Bermuda, and I was very popular in British schools, very competitive schools, and I was great there, and I had a bunch of friends. I was out in the sun all the time, water, scuba diving, and mostly snorkeling. Scuba diving was a pretty rare treat. But this picture was taken within 4 or 5 months of me getting to Key Biscayne, Florida, which at the time was sort of a middle-class residential community just off the coast of Miami. It's since become much more upscale, but at the time it was really just middle class, even lower middle class families in single family dwellings, little flat, Florida houses, no stories, just nice houses with little backyards. But the reason I want to bring this picture up is because this was not a really good time for me. I'd just been ripped up from where I'd grown up and came to a strange place, and whenever you come to a strange place, you get picked on. And I didn't have a lot of friends here. In fact, I didn't have any friends here right around the time this picture was taken. Didn't know anybody. And I had bit of an accent from Bermuda, and I got picked on a lot. And I wasn't a very good baseball player because I'd only had, I don't know, I think just before I left Bermuda, I might have had a half a season on the naval base back in Bermuda. But I came here to Key Biscayne, and everybody's, not everybody was mean. I made some friends right away. But nevertheless, it was an interesting time for me. And one thing I remember very, very well about this moment in time, within a week or two of this picture being taken, I was sitting on the dugout waiting to start a practice. And there were some older kids than me, and they were giving me a lot of grief about my accent, and they were saying, so you came from Bermuda, huh? And I was just trying to be nice. Yeah. I was like, so does that mean you're a fairy? It's like, I don't know what a fairy is. What does that mean? They go, a fairy. A fairy's, nice little thing. Is everybody in Bermuda fairies? You were all fairies, weren't you, in Bermuda? Weren't you a fairy in Bermuda? Everybody in Bermuda was fairies, weren't they? They were really digging the fact that I had no idea what a fairy was. I not a clue. And I said, yeah, I guess I'm a fairy. And then everybody's laughing hysterically. Oh boy, that was hilarious. And then somebody explained to me what a fairy is, and I still didn't understand it. I mean, we were so naive in those days compared to, we weren't sexting each other. I was 10 years old when that picture was taken. It's like, a fairy's a guy who likes guys. And I'm thinking, we're all here playing baseball. We all like guys, don't we? Does that make us all fairies? The point of all this is bullying and teasing. And it wasn't any fun, but I'm not on a crusade to end this. I have to say, look, bullying to the degree where you're beating kids unconscious or fights in general, you got to stop school round fights, especially fights where one kid's much bigger than another. So I'm not in favor of that kind of bullying. I'm not in favor of cultures where there's, hazing cultures where individuals are, just ruthlessly mocked. But I have to say, just so we hear the other viewpoint, that bullying and teasing did me some good. And this, I just had this thought, just this split second right in my brain, I had this thought. Because what bullying taught me was, I think this is profound. I never thought about this till this exact second. I was going to tell you how bullying toughens you up and how bullying gets you prepared for adversity and how bullying means you come back to practice even though you've been bullying, and all that other stuff's important. But I didn't have this thought until this exact second. Being bullied teaches you who your friends are, and they teach you who your potential friends are going to be. Because when I think about the kids that were doing that, I can remember a couple of those kids, and I remember these guys are dicks. These guys are just jerks. But there were a lot of guys who weren't doing it. There were a lot of guys who felt sorry for me. There were guys who came up to me afterwards and said, "Don't worry about it. These guys are jerks," And these guys went on to become lifelong friends. These guys are. I have friends that I met from the time that picture was taken. Within a couple weeks of this picture being taken, which was 1970, I met two guys. One of them playing baseball. One of them on the bully team. In fact, was actually really one of the toughest, nastiest guys on the team. His name is Fritz Bronner. He's my manager now. He books my speaking engagements. Fritz and I have been friends for 44 years now. Fritz Bronner and I and my friend Steve Stipp both go back to 10 years old. Go back to 1970, and these have been friends of mine for 44 years. And listen, folks, I've said this before. I would not be sitting here talking to you today if it hadn't been for my friend Fritz Bronner or Steve Stipp or a couple of the others that I have, but mostly those two. Over the course of my 20s and 30s, when I was trying to get movies made, wandering around lost, I was living in Fritz's garage. I was in his garage for 7-8 months of my life. And he paid my bills. He paid my rent for me when things were really, really tough. I never had to go to the government, but I mean, I had my power shut off every fricking month. You're sitting in the middle of something and everything goes down. Ah, Jesus. Now you got to get in your car or your bike or whatever. You have to go down to where the power department is, and you got to bring them cash or a certified check because they're not going to take your checks anymore. I've been there. I know what this is like. And I found those friends by being bullied. I found the guys that weren't picking on me, and the ones who'd been picked on by these guys also, and guys who had also just not the stomach for it. In other words, when you're being bullied by the cruel, you find out who the cruel aren't. And these people become your friends. And if they're especially good people, they'll have pity on you. And they'll become friends, or at least they'll talk to you and try to make it okay. And I don't know if you can pull that out of society. I don't think you can, because I don't think you should. Because I have to tell you, I was at an event not too long ago, about a year ago, and after it was over, somebody, it might have been up in, no, I don't think it was in Ottawa. But anyway, it was in an event, and after the event was over, somebody said, "Would you like to come and talk to a college class that we teach in critical thinking?" Yeah, sure. I went in there, talked for an hour, and I had this girl, 19, 20-year-old, fully legal adult, if nothing else, certainly older than 18 or 19, basically accused me of being because I was a conservative, accused me of being a murderer, accused me of killing people, wanting people to die, that's what I was in it for, because I wanted to see people die. And I came back at her. I didn't yell at her. I didn't scream at her. And I said, I have to tell you, that is the most offensive, disgusting thing I've ever heard. You don't know anything about me. You know absolutely nothing about me. You know nothing about my background. You know nothing about where I came from. That's the most repulsive, disgusting, arrogant, obnoxious thing I think I've ever heard to my face, and you should be ashamed of yourself. You should be ashamed of yourself. And that was the term and the language and the volume I used. And she burst into tears and ran out of the room, and everybody got down on me on it. Why are you so mean to her? Why am I so mean to her? I'm here giving you my time for free. I'm being as reasonable and rational, as calm as a human being. She accuses me of murder. It's a mortal insult. I don't yell and scream at her. I don't threaten to throw anything. I don't threaten to hurt her. I respond to her arguments with heat, not with anger, not with rage, not out of control, with heat. And now suddenly she's the one who's the victim. She's the one who's the victim because I'm the one who's mean. And I just have come to realize it's because these kids, I keep hating to come back to the millennials, and every time I do, I always get comments from people saying, "Well, I'm not like that." I'm obviously you're not like that. You're watching the show. But what it really comes down to is they're not allowed to deal with adversity on the playground, and so they have to deal with adversity in real life. And in real life, the consequences are much higher. That's why there is a playground, for God's sakes. What do you think play is for anyway? Why do you think animals play? Why do all higher level animals play? Why? It teaches them what's going to happen to them when they get older. It's a dress rehearsal. It's a simulation for life, right? It's all about it. And when you take this away, what you're really doing is you're really taking away your ability to cope. And so here's another thought I've never had until just this exact second. But really, if you think about it, bullying in childhood is like a form of inoculation. When you inoculate somebody against smallpox, what you do is, one of the reasons why pretty maids all in a row was a term from a nursery rhyme was that if you were a milkmaid, you developed cowpox. And cowpox was related to smallpox, but it wasn't nearly as virulent or as deadly as smallpox. And the most important difference was cowpox didn't leave permanent scars the way that smallpox did. And so, say pretty maids all in a row, they were called pretty maids because milkmaids didn't get smallpox. And the reason they didn't get smallpox was because they got cowpox. And cowpox is enough like smallpox so that if you developed cowpox, you would have an immunity, or at least some kind of immunity, against smallpox. And when you get a smallpox vaccination, what you're really getting is the smallpox virus. They're giving you smallpox. It's either been killed or weakened to such a degree that your body recognizes it, produces antibodies to protect you against it in the future, but you don't get such a dose as to give you the disease and kill you in the first place. And that's what I think this kind of bullying on the playground is. It's a weakened form of adversity and stress and hardship that prepares you for much higher stresses to come. Much higher stresses to come. In RK theory, we would say that these sort of things strengthen your amygdala and your response to threat assessment. And I think that's exactly right. And I think that the reason that liberals want bullying removed completely is because they don't want any negative influences. They don't want to feel that negative sense of something wrong. They don't want to feel that sense of being left out or something's wrong. And because they never feel that anything's wrong, they don't think anything's wrong. And so when you tell them, guess what? We can't print money forever. It's going to come to an end. They don't want to hear it. 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 Iran getting a nuclear weapon could be the end of New York City. Nope, nope, not happening. Nope, 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 nope. This is what childhood is for. This is what play is for, right? It's through play and through finding out that not everything is good. And another thing bullying teaches you is not everybody out there is going to be your friends. And you can be as nice to them as you can be, and that's the liberal strategy, You see this sometimes. You see this advice. You see this advice. Mom, I got beat up at school, or some kid bullied me or took my lunch money or something. Why don't you go up to him and talk with him? Why don't you go up to him and find out what it is that's bothering him? Son, why don't you go up to the bully and ask him if he's having problems at home? And they think this will work. They think this will work. They do. They think it'll work. They think that the avoidance of the threat, that the avoidance of the unpleasantness, and not only the avoidance, but the pacification of it will actually do it. No. Bullies, I was never a bully. Bullies are extremely insecure individuals who find a way to alleviate that insecurity through intimidating others and by puffing themselves up. They're cowards. It's really true. They're cowards. They work best in packs. But bullies, when it's all said and done, folks, bullies are doing something that every species has in it genetically. Bullies are doing something that's coded for not just for humans or for mammals. Every species has in it a survival. They're here because of the mechanism. That mechanism is designed to kill the weak. That's what it's there for. All animals kill the weak. There's a story I heard not too long ago. Apparently it's on video or something. And I might have told this in Stratosphere Lunch a couple episodes back, where basically there's some footage of a horse, a mare gives birth to this foal. And the foal's deformed, it's got a bad leg or something, and the foal's trying to stand up, and all the females are around it in a circle, and they're trying to nudge it and help it stand up. And apparently the stallion comes galloping in, takes one look at this foal trying to stand up, sees its bad leg, and stomps it to death. Now let me finish before I'm done here, because I don't want, frankly, no, I was going to say I don't want, if Daily Kos wants to run with this, fine. They can take whatever I say out of context as much as they want to. But the point I'm trying to make is this, that stallion is trampling that lame horse to death, because the stallion knows on a genetic level that if it lets it live, that genetic defect that caused that bad leg will be passed on, and then the entire herd will have bad legs, and then there won't be a herd anymore. That's what's going on with that reaction. That's what I think is going on with bullying. Now, the difference is we are civilized people. We have morals and civilizations. Those of you who think that I'm in favor of bullying, you're wrong. I'm not in favor of killing the weak. I'm not in favor of killing the old. I think the ability to protect the weak and the old and the sick is what makes us human and makes us worthwhile, makes us worth salvation. It makes us worth striving. I'm not saying we kill the weak at all. On the contrary, I'm saying we protect the weak by having strong people who are on the side of goodness, which is what we're back to before. But look, in terms of bullying as a means of psychological and emotional stress, you either give it to them early or you give it to them late. They're going to get it. And the older they are without these coping mechanisms, the worse they feel. And I saw something recently, and I pulled it. I think I was going to do a trifecta on it. I've got it somewhere. I'm going to do an afterburner on it or a firewall or something. And it was about a woman who's in therapy, and she's 40 years old, and she's still in college, and she doesn't want to leave college. She's talking to her therapist, and she says, I can't do the laundry. I don't have, not that I don't know how. Well, she doesn't know how, but she doesn't have the emotional reserves to do laundry because it's so stressful for her that she can't face the idea that she would have to go and learn how to put clothes in a clothes washer. She's in her 40s now. And if you don't think this is getting worse, you're wrong. If you don't think it's coming all the time, you're wrong. This is what happens when you don't let people grow up. So I'm sure she was protected and was a precious snowflake her entire life. I'm sure she was driven around by her parents her entire life. Now she's 40 years old, cries all the time, and that's child abuse. Those parents abuse that child by not allowing that child to suffer any hardships or any conflicts. They did. When I was a boy, my mom knew I had a decent head on my shoulders, knew I wasn't going to go up and ask for get in somebody's van unless they offered me candy, and, knew I was a pretty sensible kid. So by the time I was 13 or 14, I was working at the Miami Space Transit Planetarium. I was working at the observatory, and there was a guy there who had a big telescope, 16-inch telescope mounted on a trailer. It looked like an artillery piece, towed it behind his VW van, and we would go out at least twice a month, if not 3 times a month, depending on the moon, to the Everglades. We'd drive out there 40, 50 miles in a VW van, towing this giant home-built telescope. We'd go out there and we'd stay out all night and come back the next day. Mom, I'll see you. When are you going to be back? Well, sometime tomorrow. Okay. Same thing with my brother. My brother Steve, who's very different than me, would go out to the Everglades. He'd take his shotgun and his dog and a tent and a jug of water. He'd be out in the Everglades for 3 days. My mom didn't try to stop him because she knew if he had tried to stop him, it would have killed him somehow. It would have taken something major away from him. She knew that before he went out to the Everglades, he would spend hours in the woods and then a night in the woods and whatever. He didn't just toss him out in the Everglades. She knew he could handle it. She also knew if something happened to him, better let something happen to him and have him be a boy and have a life than try to keep him locked in a bedroom forever and go after him with antiseptic baby wipes at age 15. She let him be a kid, then she let him be a man, and he is a man, and he's a tough guy. My brother Steve can do anything. My brother Steve could go out in the Everglades at age 14 with a dog and a gun and stay alive. There's a lot of things he knows how to do that I don't know how to do, that I admire very much. So, when we rave about these things, as conservatives changing, it's not that we're changing, we don't like them because they're different. We don't like them because we can see that they're worse. And so, once again, the picture's worth 1,000 words edition of the Stratosphere Lounge. That picture of me, I look back on as one of the happiest time of my life. And I made lifelong friends who I can call right now. I spoke to one of them at noon today, a guy who I met who was playing catcher when I don't know if he was playing catcher at that bat, but he was playing catcher. My friend Fritz, I met him right then in 1970 when I was 10 or 11 years old. He was a year older than me, considerably bigger than me. I'm about to be 55. He's 56. We've known each other 45 years. He's kept me alive. I try to keep him alive. And we met because of, bullying. I don't know what to tell you. But you got to let kids be kids. Moving on, I have a hard out at 8 o'clock, which is 7:30 now, so we'll get as many done as we can. Then we'll save them. I love doing this. Maybe we do another one next week, or we'll get to some more of them and see if we do it. But yeah, that's my opinion on that particular picture. This one's nice. That's Spaceship 2. I always thought Spaceship One obviously is just it screams Burt Rutan because it's so unusual. I thought Spaceship One was kind of ugly, to be honest with you. Just a cylinder with a pointy nose and then that weird long tail. But Spaceship 2, I think, is really very, very elegant and very cool. A lot I want to say about this, and I won't have time to say all I want to say. The first thing I'll say is when I saw this picture show up in my Facebook section, because as you probably know by now, we always get our questions from Facebook the day of the show. When I first saw this picture of Spaceship 2 doing a rocket test, the first thing that came to my mind was, wow, look at that, and instantly followed by the fact that that's a friend of mine. Of all the things that happened to me in my life as a result of this incredible, weird career path that I stumbled into that you people make possible for me, of all the things that you do to make possible for me, it's meeting you, and I met a bunch of people. I met a couple of Stratosphere loungers at the event in that other town down in Florida. And somebody handed me a couple of buttons that said the Common Sense Resistance on it. Thank you very much. It really meant a lot to me. So I meet people, and I love the people I meet are just the best people in the world. But one of the people I've gotten to be close friends with is Burt Rutan. Burt Rutan invites me up to his house for the 4th of July. I hang out on the 4th of July with Burt freaking Rutan, who's been a hero of mine ever since 1990s. Earlier, 87, I guess, was when he built Voyager and flew around the world. And to sit there on the deck of his house and talk about aviation, aerospace, and for him to ask me about things and ask me my opinion is mind-boggling. But Burt Rutan is a great, 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 great American. He's a great patriot, and Burt Rutan is in a class of people that you could probably number down to 5. Genuine, outside the box, genuine genius. So there's that. But the one thing I think I wanted to say about this picture that's a little disturbing is, Spaceship One flew in, was it 2004 or 2005? I mean, it's been 10 years since he did this. Burt thought that Spaceship 2 would be flying by 2008 or 9 at the latest. And Burt said something else that really I thought was very interesting, and that was when Scaled agreed to do Spaceship 2, and Virgin and Branson wanted to basically buy it. They said, "We're happy to do it, and we're happy to have the partnership, and we're happy to do all of this." But he said that he was not going to allow Scaled to do it to the degree where they could own it, so that, in other words, if Virgin wanted to buy, and originally Virgin was supposed to buy like 3 or 4 White Knight 2 launchers and something like 7 of these things. I don't know what the new buy is. But Burt said they can buy 50 of them if they want to, but they're not the only people that could buy them, because Burt was hoping that other companies would buy these things, and then guess what would happen? Guess what Burt Rutan wanted to happen? He wanted to have 3 or 4 of these companies with these vehicles, and then they would be in competition with each other. They'd be lowering prices, and they'd be working on a way to find a way to get it done. And it hasn't happened that way. And it's been very, very delayed. I have friends up at X-Core who make traditional rocket engines. The rocket in the look, I'm not making any judgments here. I'm just not enough of an engineer to know. But the rocket in Spaceship One was a very unusual rocket. It burned rubber basically as a combustion element, and an oxidizer. X-Core and other people are using rockets that are traditional binary-fueled liquid rockets. And my understanding is that so many of the delays on Spaceship 2 are with the engine. I don't think the engine can do it. It's one thing to put one guy up there and enough weight for the other 2 people. By the way, the X Prize was determined it had to have a crew of 2 passengers, I think. So they, even though they didn't want to carry 2 extra people because of the risk, they had to carry the ballast, the weight of them. But it's been 10 years since we went up in Spaceship 1, and Spaceship 2 isn't doing it, and I think they're having problems with the engine. I just don't think that rubber rocket can do it. I don't know why they didn't go to a more conventional design. But, there they are. They've done tests. I don't know if they've gone I think they've gone supersonic in Spaceship 2, but they're nothing like getting to their suborbital altitudes yet. So, on one hand, I'm very proud. Well, there's no two hands about being proud to be friends of Burt Rutan. But as far as Spaceship 2 is concerned, man, it's a beauty. And somebody put the money up for it, and God bless you, Branson. But they're behind schedule, and I think this is what happens when you're no longer being run by one man with a vision. Spaceship 1 was run by Burt Rutan, who handpicked the most creative, original, young, generally, offbeat, often, engineers, and just did it. And they just got together and did it. And now Spaceship 2 is a much different thing. You got to carry passengers, which means you have to have a whole different level of safety. And in a way, Spaceship 2 is everything that's gone wrong with the world. It's the sense of, I think Branson said, or somebody said about the Spaceship 2 program, the Virgin program, was that we cannot have a failure. The vehicle simply can't fail. It simply cannot happen. We cannot allow people to be killed. And you can't do anything with that attitude. We'd never have the amazing record we have. As it turns out, nobody gets killed in general aviation. It's 12 years now or something since there's been a major carrier accident, fatality in America. We had an accident, but thank God, Schellenberger, no fatalities. It's been 12 years since there's been a person killed by in a crash of a major airliner in the United States. We have that safety record, not because our attitude was we can't ever have a passenger get killed, but because we were flying so many passengers with so many different types of vehicles that we learned where all the gremlins were. All those aviation records and rules are written in blood. You have to kill people in order to find out how things work. And if you're not ready to kill people, you're not going far enough out into the wilderness. You're not pushing the envelope. Most people don't know what pushing the envelope means. They've heard the term as pushing on the outside of the envelope. They think it's squeezing on a piece of paper or something. No. The envelope, the flight envelope, is a graph. It's a chart. If you look at it on a graph, it's a chart, and it measures your altitude and your airspeed, and it'll show you what the performance will be at a certain altitude and certain airspeed. Certain airspeeds and altitudes are off limits for the airplane. The airplane can't achieve them. They can't fly faster than this or slower than this. And when you plot the altitude and the airspeed on a graph, it is something that very, very, very generally looks like an envelope. It's not a perfect square. It's a kind of a trapezoidal kind of thing. So that's the flight envelope. It's a collection of airspeeds and altitudes that are determined by flight test. And when you say push the envelope, what you're really saying is we're going to take this aircraft now beyond what we know to be safe, beyond the safe design limits. Not to put a fine point on it, folks, you can't know where the safe is until you know where the unsafe is. You can't know what the plane will do until you can find out what it won't do anymore. And that's what test pilots do. And test pilots, by the way, are, given this image of being these swashbuckler guys like, screw it, we're ready, Maverick, how dare you buzz the tower? No. Flight engineers are the most meticulous, careful, cautious, patient, disciplined people they are. And flight test is not like, light the fires and let's get out. Flight test is, yesterday we took the aircraft up to 295 knots, and today we're going to take her up to 298 knots, and we're going to see how she behaves there for a 4-minute period at this angle of attack. That's flight test. Very disciplined, very, really, really controlled people. This business about fighter pilots, Maverick, no. You don't give people $60 million worth of gear and just, assume that they're going to do the right thing. Flight test pilots, military pilots, not only have extraordinary skill, they have incredible amounts of discipline, just mental toughness and discipline. And flight test is precision. There's a big difference between 490 knots at a 12-degree angle of attack and 490 knots at a 12.5-degree angle of attack. All these things have to be measured, and you don't know where the safe limits are until you know where the unsafe limits are. You can design an airplane on paper and you get good results, and you can give it, these dynamic tests on computers and computational fluid dynamics to find out where the stress levels are and all that. Bottom line is you don't know until you get out there, and that's what flight test is. So Spaceship 2 is behind schedule. It should be further along, and the reason it's not further along is because they're saying we can't have a failure. Well, if you can't have a failure, even a fatal failure, you're not doing your job. I think they probably should have just said, hey, we're going to go up and break a couple. They're going to put guys in parachutes, not intentionally break the airplane. You don't want to break the airplane. You want to find out where the airplane's about to break. And I would have just gotten out there much more aggressively. And folks, I haven't given up on the free frontier. I've got a 2-year plan, and I've got steps that have to get there, and things have to happen in a certain order. But when free frontier comes along, we are going to be crystal clear about this. And Rand Sindberg, a friend of mine, basically says safety is not an option. Failure is not an option, is what Gene Kranz said on Apollo 13. You cannot do this safely by reasonable standards, by legally actionable standards of safety. This can't be done. You have to give it up. And another great American, another alpha male, strong, brave, gutsy guy, who's also a friend of mine, although I don't know him terribly well, is Mike Rowe, who did dirty jobs and really showed people what the lengths that ordinary folks go to make sure that we don't have to do these horrible, filthy things. Dirty Jobs was really the basis of inspiration for me for 3.5 days. The thing about the Occupy Wall Street thing. But Mike Rowe basically put an entire series together, and he got a lot of trouble for it, where he basically said safety third. He's absolutely right. Nothing is safety first. He was talking about, I think I've said this before, if you're talking about the fishing fleets out there, the crab fishing, the most dangerous profession in America today, he said safety's not first and it's not second, safety's third. He said first of all is the mission. We're going out to get some crabs. If safety was first, we wouldn't even go. It's dangerous. Of course we're going to go. So first is the mission. What are you trying to do? We want some crabs. Okay, that's first. What's second? Well, we got to get these crabs out of the ocean at less money than we can sell them for. So if safety were first, you wouldn't go. If safety were second, you would build a boat that couldn't turn over and everybody be in diving suits and everybody be strapped to the deck, and you'd spend $1 million to bring home $100,000 worth of crab. And so safety isn't second either. Cost is second. Safety's third. Once we decide to go, and once we can afford to go, then let's try to come back. Safety should be third, not first and not second. When you say safety is first, it's going to fail. So G. William, a great name, pointed out that Mike Rowe gave it as a TED Talk. I know he'd done it. I didn't know he did it as a TED Talk, and I've never heard it. I've heard Mike talk about it to me personally, which is kind of a thrill for me. Same thing with the Burt Rutan thing. But yeah, he's absolutely right. And by the way, what's the problem with that? Aren't we free people? We used to be. If I want to go, and I do, and I will, if I want to go ride in a Lynx or which is the X-Core suborbital vehicle, if I want to go, they're going to say, Bill, this vehicle's flown 5 times, 10 times, or whatever, and it could explode, or it could break up on reentry, or you could lose pressure. Well, I don't believe that vehicle's pressurized. Your suit could lose pressure, and if you lose pressure on the way up, there's no way you can get you down. You're going to just suffocate up there. You could die up there. Your chances of dying up there are a lot better than they are standing here watching it go. Do you want to go? Yes, I do. Explain to me what could go wrong. Explain to me what you think the chances are. Explain to me if we have backups for these things. I want to be informed. But after I'm informed, then I'll say, yes, let's go. Because I'd rather die in space than die on the ground, if you really want to know. So, yeah, of course I'd go. And you'll always find people who want to go. Always. And you should be able to do that with the passengers, too. You should be able to say to passengers, this is the riskiest thing that you can do. Riskier than bungee jumping. It's riskier than skydiving. It's riskier than all this stuff. You got a fair chance of getting killed doing this. And in exchange for that, you get to see outer space. Yes or no? That's it. Just that simple. And if they all die, that should be the end of it. That should be like, you should try to fix the problem that caused that failure. Right? Exactly. Find the problem so it doesn't happen again. If you don't do that, you're negligent. That's my problem with NASA. My problem with NASA was not that the external tank was ruptured by the solid rocket booster burn through, and my problem with NASA was not that there was a hole in the wing caused by departing foam. Those are things that you have to fly in order to learn. My problem with NASA was that NASA had flown and had learned these things before people were killed. They had burn-throughs on the SRBs numerous times before Challenger. They had foam coming off the tank numerous times before Columbia. That's where I get off at NASA. I'm not blaming NASA for not knowing these things. I'm blaming NASA for not doing something about them once they knew about these things. So, this is what being an adult is about. Forget being a man. It's about being an adult. Any adult person can make that decision. Anybody who's old enough to make that decision can make that decision. And 18 works for me. I don't know why you're not allowed to drink at 18. If you're old enough to join the armed forces and get your only life shot out of you, then that's old enough for me, by God. And once you're an adult, you should be able to look at the risk. Do you understand the risks? I do. Sign this paper. Do I have to sign 600 places? No. Do I have to initial 4,000 places? No. I have to have one line at the bottom. Do you understand the conditions of this and agree to them? I do. Sign your name and the date. Boom. Witness by. Bam. I should be able to go up there, be blown to atoms, and not have my relatives or anybody else take a penny out of the people who went to the trouble to give me that opportunity. Whatever estate I have, I should donate to the people so they can fix that problem so they don't hurt the next person down. They're going to kill somebody else. They just shouldn't kill them for the same reason. That's pretty much the way I look at these things. I had time for one more, and then we'll save the rest for later. What do we got next? I'm going to switch these around. And then we can come back to these next time. Oh, boy. What do you say about The Far Side? This is the most brilliant cartoon done by the most brilliant cartoonist ever. What do you say? This is literally one of the classic commercials of all cartoons rather of all time, and it's one of the classics. First of all, because just the execution, it's beautifully drawn. It's really beautifully drawn. He managed to capture that kid in such a way that he just looks kind of dumpy, and we all know that kid. And it would be funny if it were just the kid and the door and the sign. But Midvale School for the Gifted is what makes this an all-time classic. So there's a lot going on here that I like. But what it really is, this is really an indictment of elitism, isn't it? This is really an indictment of the idea of accreditation. The idea that if you came from the Midvale School for the Gifted and you had a diploma on your wall that said you were a graduate of Midvale School for the Gifted, then you'd have a chance to lord it over other people because they didn't go for Midvale School for the Gifted. So there's that. There's the general cluelessness of it. There's the inability to see the obvious. The one thing that I like so much about this sign is that so many people are looking for complex solutions to simple problems when the simple solution's right in front of their eyes. This cartoon reminds me a little bit of something. I think I might have mentioned this once before. I was when I was in British schools in Bermuda. In fourth grade, we had a weekly schedule instead of daily schedule. So among the many subjects I was taking in fifth grade was chemistry. Not just science. I was taking chemistry, physics, and biology all in the fifth grade. And one of the things I'll never forget about that class was we had a test tube on held over a Bunsen burner, and we filed into the classroom, and this thing was bubbling, and there were like little crystals at the bottom of it. And we were, some distance back from this thing. And so I saw this bubbling test tube, or maybe it was a beaker or something. And anyway, it was bubbling, and bubbles were coming out of it. And vapor was coming out of the top of it. And the Bunsen burner was on. And the teacher asked the class, he said, how can we determine whether or not the bubbles are being generated by the heat or being generated by a chemical reaction? It's a pretty interesting question to ask fifth graders. And everybody a lot of people came up with interesting answers. I had my hand up, and a lot of people had their hands up, and they were really, really, really interesting answers. Somebody was talking about analyzing the kind of gas and looking for trace elements of this, and somebody was trying to figure out if they could get an idea of what the chemicals were, whether there was being heat generated, endothermic reaction, all this other stuff, and all these really profoundly deep, insights into a way to determine whether or not these bubbles were coming from the heat or whether they were coming from the chemical reaction. And finally, he pointed over at me and said, Mr. Whittle. And I said, you could turn the burner off. And he just looked at me and smiled, and he said, that's the one I'm looking for. That doesn't mean I always get the right answer, but that's the one I was looking for. And I remember it stayed with me forever because obviously I was proud of it, but it also stayed with me forever because it was like so many times the obvious answer is right in front of your nose. What is it? Is it this or is it this? Can I control one of these two variables? Yes. Which one can you control? I can control the heat. Turn the heat off. Turns out When I turned the heat off, the bubbles stopped. So it was the heat. It wasn't the chemical reaction. Simple solution when you would often expect a complex one. The one of the great sci-fi movies ever is Andromeda Strain. It doesn't hold up super well today, but it's still not bad. I remember thinking, man, look at all those awesome computers in there and that underground bases. I'm a sucker for underground bases. So first real computer graphics, although I bet you anything those were actually done not by computers. I bet the computer graphics of the Wildfire Complex were probably drawn by hand, like the computer graphics were in 2001: A Space Odyssey. They were hand animated by Disney, I think, in Space 2001. But anyway, the Andromeda Strain has a plot point, really important plot point, where it turns out, hopefully no spoilers from a movie that was released in 1970, I think, turns out that they're waiting for a transmission. The critical transmission has to get into this Wildfire Complex. And when the transmission, it's like a teletype machine. When the teletype machine comes in, a little bell goes off. And so they're troubleshooting why they didn't get the bell. And they have guys looking at the lines. They have guys looking at the transmission lines. They got guys looking at the electronics. They got guys inside the machine checking the guts of the things. They're testing all the circuits. They're doing all these things and trying to figure out why this bell didn't go off. And all of these computer things. And what you find at the end was that a little tiny piece of this paper had gotten wedged in between the clapper and the bell. And so it was a simple mechanical problem that they basically tore down the network trying to find. And that stayed with me too. So Midvale School for the Gifted is an example of looking for the complex in the face of the simple. And it's also just plain stubbornness and inappropriateness, and the fact that you don't have to be a super bright guy to get into a top quality elite school. But there's something else here that I wanted to talk about. Another reason I took this thing. This will be our last question for the night. Another reason why I decided to take this thing. I mentioned before, it looks like we're probably going to be able to find a way to scrape up money to do Common Sense Resistance as an actual feature film. Low-budget feature film, but a feature film. And do it prior to Big Bat Problems. And I was talking with Lyda Loudon not too long ago. She was up visiting for a weekend, and we were talking about this idea, and she was talking about the idea of putting people in a room and peer pressure and things like that. And coming off of talking with her about that, I had this idea for this thing, because the story of the Common Sense Resistance is about a guy who's working for the state, who's a messaging guy. He's making commercials for Omnicare, and he's being recruited to infiltrate the Common Sense Resistance. So one of the problems I have as a writer is I have to have a series of tests, loyalty tests, performance tests, and so on, because if you're going to induct somebody into a secret society, you can't just bring them in. You got to walk them in steps, and you got to see how they respond, and you got to, limit the damage if they go rogue on you. And well before I saw this cartoon, I was thinking about this. This about a week ago, and I was thinking one of the tests would be that our guy and maybe 4 or 5 or 6 other actual genuine recruits, not ringers, would be taken blindfolded underground and put in a cell, and they'd be put in the cell, and the blindfolds would be taken off, and the cell door would go clang shut, and then you'd hear this clunk, and they'd be left in the cell. And then it turned out they'd be left in the cell for hours, and then maybe even left in the cell for days, until they come to realize that maybe this whole thing is just a giant trap, and that they're going to be stuck in this cell forever. There's no food, and there's no water, there's no latrine. It's just getting worse and worse and worse in there. And all of these guys are just starting to lose it, man. They're just starting to panic and freak out. And I'm talking about 12, 16, 20 hours, 24. I don't know how long yet. I haven't figured it out yet. But basically what happens is a couple of them go up on the door and push, and there's bars on the cell. And finally our hero goes up to the door and pulls. And the door's wide open. The door's never been locked. It's been open the whole time. And the complex is completely deserted. And it's an IQ test. It's not just an IQ test. It's a submission test. It's a conformity test. And just by pulling rather than pushing, I may not even have him push, frankly, because I think, frankly, it may even be stronger just to have the door slam In fact, it is certainly stronger. The door slams. You hear the clunk of the key turning in the lock. You hear the bolt moving, but the bolt doesn't move. The door was never locked. The door's always been unlocked, because the recurring theme of the common sense resistance and the message that the common sense resistance is going to issue, rather than this verbalization that I always do, they're going to talk in pictures a lot more. They're going to basically, recurring theme is that we are slaves without chains. We are shackled about the wrist, but the chains don't connect to the wall. That we live in a cage for which the door is open. We just keep pressing the food pellet. And this is the first lesson they're going to learn, that our guy's going to learn, about the common sense resistance. And that's why the common sense resistance set it up this way. Presumably, these guys would have died in there of starvation if none of them had figured it out. But the first thing they teach them about the common sense resistance is, you have the cues, you hear the door slam, you hear the lock, but the door's not locked. You're in a cage that is unlocked, and that freedom belongs to those who test the bars, that freedom belongs to those who are not willing to accept the condition of being locked, and at the very least will make an effort to try to get out. Those are the people that they want, the people who see a door lock, hear a door lock, and then just don't assume that the door is locked. And I'd love to tell you that our hero just snaps right to it. The door is not locked. No, he's in there forever. He's in there forever. And when he finally pushes on that door, which has been open the whole time, he should be so nice thing about being the writer. He's so disgusted with himself that it really is a breakout, kind of a epiphany moment for him, and he takes that experience with him for the rest of his life. You've been locked in a cage. You heard the lock click, but the door was never locked. You just were given the idea that it was locked. My mom told me this story. It's very similar. It's virtually identical story. I don't know if it's true, but it sounds like it's true. But I'm told that the way you train an elephant is, you take an elephant outdoors and you chain it, put a collar around its neck or tie it to its tail or whatever, and you chain it to a stake that's driven deep into the ground. And the elephant, being a wild animal, will tug on this chain and tug on the stake until they realize that they simply can't out-tug this chain or this stake. And then they replace the chain with a smaller chain, and then eventually they replace it with a string. And all the elephant has to do is feel resistance, just the resistance, and it knows it can't get out, so it stops pulling. But that's how you can basically lead an elephant around with a string. The elephant becomes conditioned to accept the fact that once it feels the resistance on its neck, it can't win, and so it doesn't resist. And ultimately, you can run a whole herd of elephants on a string, which any elephant could break at any time it wanted to. But it's been conditioned not to. It's been conditioned to accept the power and the feelings and the trapping of power, and then it stops resisting the power. It's just a simple conditioned response, just like Pavlov ringing a bell and having the dog salivate, because when you ring the bell, here comes the food. But there you go. That's how it works. So I get through a little more than half. Not even half, really. About half. So I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll save the half, and we'll do the other half next time. We'll do another, Pictures Worth 1,000 Words, Episode 2. We don't want to do a bunch of them. And I'll take the best ones of the ones I didn't use, and we'll put some new ones in there. We'll do it next time, and that'll be fun. But I do have to run tonight. Isn't that nice? So, yeah, it was a fun episode, different diversion, kind of fun thing to do. And hopefully we all learned something, had a good time. And 2 hours and 4 minutes of our irreplaceable lives has gone by listening to this drivel. Thanks again, as always. When I got out to that unnamed city, the reception I got there, it just gets warmer and warmer. It's just, I know some of you watching were there, and I know that some of you watching have been to events that I've been to, and I just can't tell you how much it means to me, and how fortifying it is, and how much it makes me want to get up and just go at it again. So for your incredible reception, your warmth, both down there in the Florida State Capitol and and elsewhere. It really means so much. I mean, as always, the questions, the Facebook support, and all the paying subscribers at BillWhittle.com just wouldn't be here without you. So thanks again for everything, and hope you had a good time. I always do. And always learn something from the comment sections, too. Always find myself learning something from the comment sections. So until next week, thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye now.